a viewer found himself a very special guitar. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Our story begins tonight. Jaden finds not only a birth year guitar, but his actual birthday by the serial. The kicker, though, it was located in Thailand, and he needed my help with all the import duties, taxes, paperwork, etc. And he even got lucky that it was on a cool model, so we're gonna document it for him tonight, as he wanted me to do a blacklight test and all the other due diligence stuff that you need to do with acoustics. So, this is the John Lennon J-160E model. We have not talked about one of these things before. These have a storied history in and of themselves. They were Gibson's second attempt at an electrified acoustic. That's right, this acoustic guitar has a P-90 jammed in there. We'll figure that out a little bit later on, and we also have little control knobs on the top. How goofy is that for an acoustic? But before we get too deep here, let's learn about the J-160E. It's famously used by the Beatles. Without their influence, I'm not sure they would have made as many of these in the modern era as they have, but they were first introduced in 1954, and their original slope shoulder design continues all the way until about 1969. Now, there's many of different changes. I highly suggest checking out this video right here if you want to learn a lot of in-depth information, because I'm not that guy for the J-160E, but that video is fantastic in getting a baseline rundown of many different spec changes over the years. For example, the very first year of production features a spruce top, whereas they switched to laminate tops the very next year to help cut down on feedback. And in like 1956, they add the 20th fret. 64, they get some plastic bridges. But after 69, from about 1970 to 79, they switch over into more of a square shoulder design. Those ones aren't as loved because Lennon's not playing it. And then starting in 1990 throughout the 2000s, that's when we get these reissues like we're talking about today. Now, earlier I said this was the second design. Now, if you're curious what the first one is, that was introduced in 1951. It's called the CF100E. It's got this sharp, pointy Florentine cutaway. So the J160E takes a more regular, familiar kind of J45-like design and electrifies it. Some other unique spec things about the J160E. You usually have some sort of an adjustable bridge. Again, it varies year to year. But check out our inlays. It's like Pete Townsend over here. We've got trapezoids, and you get the weird first fret marker. You don't always get that when you have the traps. But the particular one we're looking at tonight is from the year 2000. They made a 250 in this particular year. Of the Lennon reissues, it's the second base level, non-super high-end collector edition run. Like, for example, there was a cool psychedelic one offered alongside like a white and a natural. So this particular one isn't like crazily expensive or anything. But if you're all of a sudden intrigued, birth year, birthday guitar, what is that all about? Gibson serial numbers are cool because you can read the day that the neck was stamped. This is not the completion date. That's just when the neck is stamped, but it's the best we've got. So that tells us Jaden was born on January 26th, the year 2000. And then this particular guitar was number 32 for that particular day because there is a 000. Some people wait their entire lives to find that exact number. But it's a fun little hunt you can do. You can check out this guitar hunting episode right here. Towards the end of that, I actually have a section on some tips and tricks on how you can best find that guitar. But the thing is, usually when you find that guitar, it's typically a model you don't really want or it's not your favorite. He was actually looking for one of these and it just happened to work out. Now, unfortunately, this one is missing its original case as well as the COA. Now the good news, Jaden, this case actually does have a Gibson badge on the outside. Not sure if that was added or not, but it has a similar golden interior as these should have, but the outside of the case, I believe, should have the John Lennon signature. It would look like this. This one's got a lot of like a pebble cobblestone feel to it. It's a pretty cool case. And as far as case candy goes, we've got a case key, the original hang tag of the John Lennon J160E, built to 62 specs, a different feeling pre-pack checklist. I haven't documented many acoustics from this era. Another way you could go is their sign-off completion date. That's all the way in March of 2000. Manual talking about humidification. Let's just say, coming from Thailand, I wouldn't be surprised if I have to tweak the truss rod for them. And then we've got our gold Gibson owner's manual, which doesn't really look like it was ever super But some more good news, this is actually a USA TKL made case. The problem is there's just so many small limited runs. Maybe somebody will say, yeah, that's original for this particular version. I don't know. I did my best research into that. But we at least have the guitar here today. Let's go ahead and throw it onto the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs and learn the secrets of the John Lennon J-160E. I'm really excited to dive into this one because they've always been a mild curiosity to me. It's like, what is this weird single coil pickup thing going on? So what we have over top of that you're used to seeing is basically like an SG's tenon cover. It's a piece of plastic that is acting as the cover to the pickup, essentially. It gets secured to the top utilizing 2 screws right there. So no, that is not actually part of the pickup, that's just a topper to make it decorative. So even though it looks like a Fender single coil, it's a regular Gibson P-90. You can see it mounted under here. I was trying to get it off so we could see, but we'll have to use the endoscope to see what's going on because you have your 2 mounting screws right here, and then you've got your 6 pole pieces like normal. However, turning those, they just turn indefinitely and they don't actually seem to really be doing anything. So maybe it's mounted in a different way. But before we break out the endoscope, I wanted to take a look at our bridge real quick. Most acoustics, we don't have these little brass inserts into the top. That's because it's that adjustable bridge. So if you're wondering what these little screws are, it's essentially just a cute little shrunken down tailpiece stud, just with slightly different dimensions here. That just goes into place. So if you need to raise or lower your action, it's not a all-day process with a really expensive luthier. But then the bridge itself is quite fascinating. I'm not sure if this is bone or what. It seems like a material very close to that. It's really chunky. And they just file it away. That way it will insert onto those edges. It has a slight intonation ridge to it, but not like a lightning bar or anything. So that just plugs in onto the side, and that's what helps it go up and down. So you can see where that connects there, but notice it's really long underneath there too. Underneath the bridge sits this little metal piece. It came pre-bent like that. So all said and done, that's what it looks like all installed. You don't often get to see all that other stuff because it's usually much lower. But now we'll dive in here to see what else we can find, starting with our sound hole sticker. So it's J-160E John Lennon edition. There we can double confirm his serial number for him. January 26, production number 31. This is limited edition 149 of 250 for the year 2000. So they basically made like 250 or so every year for so many different years. So limited edition, yes. However, super ultra limited, no. But they could sell a good amount of these. So a big difference between this guitar and some of the other ones that we've been documenting is it utilizes ladder bracing rather than X bracing. So that's what these rungs to the ladder here are. You've got the different steps of it going all the way up here. And then looking up at the top, yep, you can see the continuation of your ladder. But as you're seeing here, this is a mahogany constructed acoustic. So you got the mahogany rims back and side, got your mahogany neck block coming in here. But let's look at our P-90 pickup. Yeah, that looks exactly like what we're used to seeing here. And okay. That right there would be why it was not moving. You've got securing lock nuts. So if you wanted to remove that, you would have to get those out. And I don't have the proper wrenching tool for that, but there's no special markings on the back. It just looks like a regular Gibson P-90 to me. But it looks like they do reinforce that P-90 pickup area with maybe a small block of maple that they scallop into shape, because that's a lot of pressure onto the top. And remember, this is a multi-ply top. It's still spruce, they just multi-laminate it, kind of like what we talked about on ES335s. But we can then follow that wire. It goes all the way up here, and then, ooh, I wish it was easier to clean those pots for him. But we can just barely make out the Gibson branding right there. Same thing with our tone control. And you'll notice they've got this extra wood placed onto the side because it'd be really easy to accidentally crack the edge over there if they don't have some additional reinforcements, because that's your output jack over on the side. And down here, it looks like maybe some glue was in there from when they were installing the bottom strap button, because it has a resecuring block there. That looks like it's made out of mahogany, but if If you look down there, it almost looks like maybe a little bit of water or something was dropped in this guitar at one point. It's not too bad though. Just in case I wasn't clear, I'm talking about that area directly in front right there, not the big white streak. Seeing lots of 8s drawn on in here. But here you can see your kerfing along the edges. It just gives them a good gluing surface and continues all around the edge. Now, if we just zoom up here, we can take a look at our bridge system. Normally, looking inside an acoustic guitar, you do not see a little brass insert right there. I thought it was a little bit trickier to get the strings out of this thing, but then these were what we were seeing earlier, our adjustable tailpiece. And then I don't know what that's about. Apparently they're just bolting the whole thing onto it. That's funny, but it looks like it has maybe a little maple strap right there just to give you some extra surface so you're not cracking anything. As far as the laminate top, I don't see any obvious seam lines right here, but they must be there. Yeah, okay, I see it. Zoom in real closely, you can see the 3-ply material, but that's only because we have this really bright light on it. But that was a fun learning experience here. And what's great, rather than most acoustic electric guitars, this is a normal electric guitar pickup rather than an undersaddle piezo system, so that means no batteries in here. Fantastic. Although if we're being real here, there's probably a reason we don't see many modern day guitars spec'd like this, but who knows? We'll find out together here. I've never actually plugged one of these in or played it before. Now you might be noticing, hey, Trogly, that looks really nice. What did you do? I gave him a complimentary cleaning service because look at this thing before. It had fingerprints all over the body. The frets were obnoxiously corroded. Those strings, let's just say we weren't gonna get a demo out of those things. So I went ahead and conditioned the fretboard, made our bridge look nice again. And outside of some finish checking and a few other small things that we'll note throughout the review, this is actually a pretty nice example. Beggars can't be choosers when it comes to birth year guitars, but this one actually worked out okay for him. So you'll notice we've got 3-ply binding along here. So that's cool. This particular 62 version only has that single rosette that is also 3-ply. It's later additions when they add another layer around that. This appears to have a genuine celluloid pickguard. Just a warning for you, Jaden, this is off-gassing and shrinking. If you plan to store this in the case for a long period of time, don't. This will continue to off-gas shrink. It could potentially crack the top. That's probably why we had the corrosion on the frets, now that I think about it. You might want to have that professionally removed and just have a regular plastic pickguard put on there. All I'm saying is don't keep it locked in the case. It will cause you issues. But it's part of the look of these things. Celluloid looks fantastic, but it does not age well. So all this unevenness you're seeing, that's where it's slightly lifting. Although it's not too bad. As far as the rest of the bridge, you just have 2 decorative mother-of-pearl dots. And it's one of those belly-up style bridges. Nothing too fancy. As far as the bridge pins themselves, according to the spec sheet this one came with, they're just regular plastic. But now, hey, we don't normally have knobs over here. I was curious how they were doing that. So it appears they put an extra washer underneath it. I pulled that knob off because it was really loose. I wanted to secure that for him, and I noticed that. I was like, yeah, I should show you guys that. But this particular version utilizes the reflector style knob, the golden one, similar to what you'd find on a 60s burst. However, depending on what year you're reissuing for this, it will change. Another unique thing I noticed is, look, the 10 position is all the way over here and they got their thumb bleeders. Usually electric guitar 10's like here, so that's different. I don't know if somebody just modified this one or not. Just noticed. But plugging it in to get our DC resistance reading, I'm noticing, yes, it's on the edge. This is before they learned that they could just have an output jack double as your strap button. So that is kind of funny and archaic. Looks like I might need to clean those electronics for them because I wasn't getting a reading at first, but now that I've messed with the output jack, it does. So it's a regular P-90 as far as the readings go, just a little bit over 8K ohms. And does that act as a volume? Sure does. Does this act as a tone? As far as the rest of the top here, it still looks like a beautiful spruce. It's just multi-laminate ply to once again help deaden it because you're trying to cut down on the feedback. But they still make it look traditional with the 2-piece top to it. And Jaden, there is some finish checking here and another one that runs up along here. At first I was a little bit scared. It's like, usually finish checking is pretty straight. That one's a bit jagged. However, on acoustic guitars, that's a little bit more common. I don't think you have anything to worry about as far as a crack in the top. you just got some mild medium finish checking, I guess you could say. Not super noticeable at all angles, but you'll notice it in the flesh. The only thing I might suggest to him to have a qualified luthier look at is right down here. A seam line showing where the two pieces of the body come together is not uncommon. However, I can just barely feel this with my nail. I don't think it's a crack. I think it's just slightly starting to come apart. This is to the point where maybe you could inject a little bit of glue and do some clamping. It's not a major cause for concern, but it's your birthday, birth year guitar. You might want to have it checked out just to be safe. Because at the end of the day, remember what we saw in there. There's that giant block that we were talking about. And we also saw that slight water seepage. So maybe that's why that's that way. But it's got a lot of surface glued on there. It's probably a non-issue, but again, just out of the abundance of caution, that's what I would say. Not too much going on along our edge. It's a very dark finish. You can still see through it, but you don't have the continuation of the bursted pattern or anything like that. But this thing was actually well humidified its whole life. I mean, look at the edges of the fret binding. Usually, if it's been in like bad situations, you'll get some cracks along there. So I would say this thing was well taken care of. Let's grab some approximate dimensions. We're looking at about 11.5 inches on the upper bout. The lower bout, you're at 15 3/4. As far as the entire length of just the body, it's 20 1/4 inches. And our overall thickness is just a hair over 4 inches. Although that will vary depending on where you take it because it's slightly sloped. It's about 4 3/4 down here. And now that we're finally done talking about the body, let's look at our fretboard. So this is just straight up rosewood. We already briefly touched upon this having trapezoid inlays and the fact that this has a first fret marker, which is just a little bit silly in Gibson land. Like a Les Paul Custom, yeah, we all expect that there, but not for the trapezoids. That's really Pete Townsend-ish for me. But here's another thing for you to be aware of, Jaden. Look closely at some of these inlays. They are starting to deteriorate, which means it's either a combination of this thing off-gassing and it's eating away at whatever style of celluloid that they were utilizing on this, or these inlays themselves are off-gassing. So if you lock this away in its case, this will probably crumble away one day, is something I'm letting you be aware of. Like even on the ones where you don't see it, you can technically feel it. So it must have just been like a combination of those things we were talking about. It's mainly just on those middle register ones. These ones up here are pretty good. But when you get down here, again, closer to the pick guard, yeah, that would be my ultimate guess. It's from the gases of being trapped in the case with that. As of right now, it's okay. Not going to cause you any issues. Just something to keep an eye on. For our neck dimensions, I get 1.75 inch nut, increasing to 2.09 at the 12th, 0.82 first fret neck depth. And we'll take it at the 9th, 0.95. Nice. It's a good rounded C shape. I would actually say it feels fairly slim up here, although it does get a bit chunkier up here, but in comparison to the body, I mean, it feels closer to like a medium neck profile. And if you're curious, it looks like they're just utilizing black dots on this particular one for the edge, not the tortoiseshell. Coming up to the face of our headstock, it does not look like this utilizes a Hollywood head cap. Just your regular black topper over here. Truss rods seem to function just fine. I straightened the neck out for him. And we've got our Gibson Mother of Pearl logo, as well as our crown up here, with vintage style push-in bushings of a single ring Kluson style tuner. And for this particular release, we get John Lennon's signature put on our truss rod cover. If you're curious if that's a screen print or an engraving, there's your answer. It's engraved into there. Always love that. And in case you missed it, did you notice every single screw on here is a flat one? From the mounting screws to your decorative pickup topper, to your bridge raiser and lowerer, to the truss rod cover, even the tuners on the back that we haven't seen yet. They got the flats. And after polishing the headstock, I am noticing a factory blemish. They must have had like a wood chip or something underneath the paint right there. Now, moving on to the back, you can see the dark brown finish that we've got going on here. Once again, looking at our spec sheet over here, it doesn't say anything about the back being laminate, only the top, so I'm imagining it's just single ply mahogany back and sides. but not too much to talk about back here, but you can appreciate the wood grain. After cleaning, I did find a couple of dings over here. So it's definitely seen some use in its days. The next major thing I found was like some dings or something over here on the edge. I was hoping those might clean off for him because that was one of the things that was disclosed in the dealer's listing. And then if you get it in the light over here, you can see like a tooling mark or something on the back. Personally though, I was kind of disappointed that the dealer did not point this out. There's a pretty nasty ding over here on the neck. Could you drop fill it? Sure. I was almost gonna say, maybe it already has been because I didn't feel it, but then yeah. There we go. You can just barely feel it. I'll let Jaden decide what he wants to do with that. There's also a couple of small ones down here. And the backside of our headstock. Did you notice how low everything is? Even the tuners are just like almost completely hanging off the edge there. These do have a rather short headstock to them, I guess you could say. There's our Made in USA stamp, as well as our serial number one last time for his special guitar. And if you're wondering why it looks different along the edges, that's how Gibson crafts them. They have two mahogany wings that join onto your mahogany neck. So if you're worried about that, Jaden, no, that's just regular, par for the course. I suppose now that I'm looking again, that looks like a capo mark or something. But as requested, let's do a blacklight test just for safekeeping. Looks like somebody lubricated the tuners and it kind of bled into the finish a little bit. I like how the tips to our clusins are glowing, but it looks like our headstock is good there. No major headstock trauma anyway. Running up along the edge, here's where we can confirm that, yeah, that flaked the finish just a little bit. But as far as, playing the finish off the neck, nah, you're good there. Back side of the guitar. There might have been something in the case that lightly reacted to the nitro there. Or maybe a strap was laid on the back of it, something like that. But as far as the neck being off, nope, that looks good to me. Do we have any cracks over here? There's a lot of surface area on these acoustic guitars. You gotta look carefully. It's easy to miss stuff. We'll take a look down here. Well, the good news is we don't have a giant black gap, because that would mean the finish is broken. That's probably just a seam line, and I only bring it up just to be sure. I want you to keep this very special guitar and be happy with it, because birth year guitars are super special. Our headstock looking good. We've even got maybe a little bit of glowing to our inlays. Always nice to see. And the face of the guitar looking good. That's another good way to check. Is it finish checking or a crack? Because cracks, once again, you'll typically see where the finish is broken. If this is all ghastly green, you're good to go. So I think we're peachy here. All strung back up. Here's our weight. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how it sounds. First, we'll get some nice acoustic strumming. I suppose it is a little bit quieter than some other acoustics that we've had of a similar shape. Now let's try it amplified. movement in those pots. Between like 10 and 6. But you do get quite a bit in the lower registers. But it just abruptly drops off there. I've got to say, as far as the action goes, I just completely decked down the bridge and it plays fantastically. If you wanted to go lower than that, I suppose you could remove that metal bit or maybe even shave some of that down. So as far as neck set angle issues, seems like these guitars might be okay. Let's get a couple more acoustic tone samples. I know what you're curious about. Can you distort it? Let's find out. Slowly turning up the volume knob. It's definitely vibrating because that'll just go on forever. I necessarily think this is intended to be distorted? Nah. I will say though, so far, in the room, I like this better than the traditional piezo sound. It just sounds like an electric guitar, but big. So there we go, the J-160E. I think this was a very eye-opening review and demo. I just always thought these were probably more so primitive, archaic technology and people just liked them because of the Beatles. However, no. I mean, if you're looking for a plugged-in acoustic guitar, I had a lot of fun with this. There's a lot of potential in here that I don't necessarily know if I had exactly all the time in the world to pull out of this one today. Now, as far as an acoustic, I mean, as we learned, it's not as loud as the others. However, you don't necessarily need a super boisterous acoustic if you're just playing at home anyway. It's nice to have this as like a recording tool in case you're not exactly in love with the piezo sound. So, Jaden, congratulations on your new guitar, man. I hope you seriously enjoy this. If you run into a similar situation, need help getting a guitar from another country, as long as the seller's already okay with international shipping and you're just unsure about the paperwork, I can usually help. Otherwise, my forwarding service is usually best suited towards somebody who needs help getting a guitar out of the United States. So feel free to reach out if you have anything like that, and I can assist you, or at least let you know if I can. But I know he's patiently waiting for this, so I'm going to go ahead and get this packed up and sent out. I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.